Hiya, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Have we got music still?
No.
There we are. Welcome to the first of the Cloud Management Communities. Hang on.
So we are live.
Yeah, we're definitely live. Nope, Dan's gone. Never mind. So, welcome to our October, the first of our October events. And well, that threw us off, didn't it? Should we start again? Welcome to the Cloud Management Community live event for October. What we're going to do today is essentially talk about Windows 365 versus Azure Virtual Desktop. We've got our fantastic speaker, Shabazz, and Dan's just let me know a blue screen of death there, which is very, very poor timing. So never mind. Anyway, so I'll Shabazz. Thanks for joining us. No prep at all. Can you tell? Right. So what we're going to do today is talk about this. Here we go. We have a live event. Next slide. Our agenda is as follows. We've got Shabazz Dar starting in about 10 to 15 minutes, and we're going to talk about Azure Virtual Desktop versus Cloud PC. After that, we've got the quiz, so please do stick around for that. You've got the chance to win a £25 gift voucher. You can use Amazon if you like, or we're happy to use any other if you have a particular preference against Amazon for whatever reason. And then we've got a discussion towards the end and close around about the same time. So hopefully you can join us for this. Obviously, a massive thank you to PolicyPack for sponsoring our event as usual. If you're not aware, PolicyPack is a platform for simplifying the management, security, and automation by extending Config Manager, Intune, and various other platforms. So a massive thanks to them. Let me just change the screen a bit. There we go. Got some people, faces. We are also excited to announce that we are now sponsored by Recast as well. Recast Software are the original developers of the right-click tools for Config Manager. As you can see there on the screen, I've used it all the time in Config Manager. It's brilliant. They have a massive community base that use right-click tools, and it's completely free. It's a community tool that you can just download and get access to this. It installs perfectly well and is compatible with the latest version of Config Manager. And I've been using it for about 10 years now, so it is brilliant. So thank you to them for sponsoring us. They've actually also just acquired EnhancedSoft. You might have heard of them, and they're an asset inventory solution which do insights and that kind of thing. That was announced a few weeks ago. So do check out recastsoftware.com or just Google right-click tools because they're like the first or second result. So, yeah. Good. So, as I said, we're going to do a quiz at the end, so stick around for that. But it is going to be Cloud PC related, so hopefully you listen to what Shabazz has to say. And hopefully he gives the right answers to all the quiz questions. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Good. So, Shabazz, you want to just quickly introduce yourself before we move on to your session?
Yeah, sure.
Actually, you probably introduce yourself during the session, don't you? I've probably stumped that. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a little introduction around myself. But yeah, so my name is Shabazz Dar. I'm going to be talking to you today about Cloud PC versus Azure Virtual Desktop, and just getting rid of the myth that they are in competition with each other. So yeah, I'll do a proper introduction with all my creds and whatnot.
Fine, very good. Okay, well, yeah. Should we just start? I've got your screen ready to share, so we'll do that. I'll drop the rest of us off there so you don't see our nodding heads while you're talking. But yeah, I'll probably jump in when there are some questions. If there are any questions in chat, please do jump in. You can see. Thanks, Jacob. Hi, good to see you again. If there is anyone who wants to ask a question, please jump in and ask a question. It'd be lovely to have some interaction. Again, we've got quite a low latency on this, so we should be able to respond quite quickly. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Shabazz, over to you, mate.
Thank you. So thank you, Dean, and to the rest of the Cloud Management team. So yeah, welcome to my presentation. So yeah, just to reiterate what Dean said, if you do have any questions in the chat, by all means, just pop them in there, and I'll do my best to answer them. So yeah, my talk today is going to be around Windows 365 Cloud PC versus Azure Virtual Desktop. So these are two sort of services. Well, Azure Virtual Desktop, anyway, I've got quite a bit of experience in doing a lot of production deployments. Windows 365, obviously, Cloud PC is a bit more newer than that. Obviously, it was announced maybe last month. But there are obviously quite a few similarities between the two. There's also a lot of differences between the two. And what my aim is in this presentation, just to get rid of the sort of stigma or that myth that they kind of compete with each other. Because again, the conversations I've been having with clients and my colleagues where I work is, is this a replacement for AVD? And that's not the case. So yeah, quick introduction to myself. As mentioned, my name is Shabazz Dar. That's me there. I'm a senior infrastructure specialist at a net company based in the UK. I'm a Microsoft MVP in enterprise mobility. I've been working in the IT industry in some form or other for about 15 years. The last 8 as a consultant and specifically working with cloud technology and Microsoft specifically. So my focus is mainly on Azure Infrastructure as a Service, Endpoint Manager, and that slide should have been updated to AVD, but it says WVD, but Azure Virtual Desktop as well. So yeah, today just a little quick agenda of what I'm going to be talking about. So the first thing I would like to cover is, what is Windows 365 Cloud PC? Some of you may already know, some of you may not, but just for reference, I'm just going to cover off what that is. Then I'm going to explain a little bit about what Azure Virtual Desktop is. So what I'm trying to do is set the scene for what each one of those two is, which one of those two services are, and what they portray, I think is the right word I'm looking for. And then hopefully we can start going into some use cases for Windows 365, and then some for Azure Virtual Desktop. So these again are based on conversations that I've had with clients, so real life conversations, rather than what you can read off the internet, because a lot of use cases don't come out until you start having these conversations with people and organizations and businesses that have a problem. And that's essentially where this information is coming from, real life conversations, not just read off the internet about whatever use case. And then finally, I'll hopefully answer what the differences are and the 365 versus Azure Desktop sort of myth. And that's kind of the nice slide I've got, which kind of shows the features and services in the back plane of both. And then we can hopefully compare those and you'll understand a bit more about the differences. So what is Windows 365 PC? It's a desktop as a service platform. So a DAS might be, see, that acronym can work for a lot of things, but it's essentially a desktop as a service platform. So you've got a hosted PC that's hosted in Microsoft Cloud. So you don't have any physical kit. You need some sort of physical kit to connect to, but that can be your own personal one. It doesn't have to be a company owned one. Your organization own what would be in Windows 365 Cloud PC, whatever you've provisioned. That's what there will be their sort of production service. So it's desktop as a service essentially. And what you get with that is you get the same behavior as a physical PC. So if you think you're probably all watching this on a laptop or maybe a tablet or some sort of device. From a Windows perspective, you get the same sort of features, the same experience as you would a physical PC. So it's not a shared platform. What I'm trying to say, it's something that's personal to you, and whatever resources are provisioned with that, whatever size virtual machine you get provisioned in the desktop as a service platform, that's what you get. That's what you use. So if it's a 4 gig RAM and 8 CPUs, virtual CPUs, that's what you'll use. You won't be sharing that with anybody else. There are two choices essentially with Windows 365 Cloud PC. You get two variations, let's call it. One is the business version, and again that has certain features to it. One being that you have 300. So you've got a 300 user limit. Now, that might sound to those licensing people in the audience, that might sound a bit familiar. So if you look at the Microsoft 365 licensing that's non-enterprise, so let's talk, for example, about Windows 365 Business Premium. They have a limit of 300, so you can buy up to 300 of those licenses. But if you have an organization that's more than 300, you have to provision anything over 300 with a different license. So you could have 500 users. For 200 users, you'd have to start going into enterprise licensing. So it's similar with Windows 365 Cloud PC. The business variation of it is only applicable for 300. You can only have up to 300 users. The other thing to note with the business version of it is it doesn't have the endpoint manager integration. So the MEM integration that you get, which I'll explain in a second with the other variation, you don't get with business. So if you read all the marketing spiel from Microsoft, they'll say to you that this is aimed at your kind of small businesses, ones who want to kind of, they want a fixed cost. They can't really, afford the consumption-based cost, so they just want a simple PC. They don't want any sort of management integration. So this is probably best fit for them. That's sort of marketing spiel you probably hear around it. Second variation or second choice is enterprise. So this is a Cloud PC enterprise version. Now, again, with as I mentioned, with business, you have up to 300 users. With enterprise, it's unlimited. So that's the first difference between those two variations. The second main difference is that this enterprise version integrates with Microsoft Endpoint Manager, so you get all that good Intune compliance policies, all that good management stuff. So you can do configuration profiles. You can, use autopilot to deploy them and all that sort of stuff there. So it's got that endpoint manager integration, which you don't get with business. Obviously, you pay a little bit more for that, but that's the main difference between the enterprise. The other thing to note about Cloud PC is that I think I said it a couple of sentences ago, but it's a fixed pricing model. And by that, what I mean is you choose your size that you want, and you choose which variation of it, is it enterprise or business, and essentially you then come out with a fixed monthly cost. So if you think about consumption based, which I will be talking about in a bit more detail, that consumption model, you could have a different bill every month. It's a monthly price model, but it's still you might not get the same bill every month. And whereas with Cloud PC, it's a fixed cost. So again, the sort of marketing around it, it'll say, maybe it's more aimed at small to medium businesses that want to know what their monthly costs are going to be, rather than waiting for the end of the month and getting a big bill. We've all been there. I know I have. When you forget to turn certain resources off. So that's a little short overview. There's obviously a lot more to Windows Cloud Cloud PC, but as a general overview, and again, I'm trying to compare it here with Azure Virtual Desktop. These are what I found relevant. So what is Azure Virtual Desktop? So we've done what is Cloud PC. Let's talk about Azure Virtual Desktop. So again, it's a desktop as a service platform, but the difference here being that Azure Virtual Desktop is multi-session. So by that, what I mean is you can have, again, I'll go into a bit more detail around this, but you can have multiple sessions connected to one server or one VM, so to speak. And whereas I said on Cloud PC, it's more equivalent to a personal laptop or a physical laptop you might have at home, Azure Virtual Desktop, I would say it's similar behavior to traditional remote desktop services. So for those who have dealt with sort of your on-premises VDI environments, you'll have a farm of servers, and essentially that farm of servers, your users will share the resources on there. So again, you'll have multiple people connected to what used to be a physical server. So with that being said, you can share those resources. Now, with Azure Virtual Desktop, that's where the multi-session piece comes in. So there are two deployment methods with Azure Virtual Desktop. Now, the first one is pooled, and this is where you have that multi-session capability. So with pooled, you have a farm of virtual machines. Windows 10 or Windows 7 Enterprise, I think, is supported. Server 2019 supported. Again, there's a number of different OSs, but let's just say Windows 10 for now. That's what it's based around, really. you have a number of Windows 10, let's say, virtual machines, a specific size. And again, when your users connect, they share those resources. So if you've got 2 servers with 8 gig and 12 CPUs, that'll be shared over when your users, and they'll just kind of until they're full. Now, the pooled, what they call a host pool is what the name of the deployment method is. So a pooled host pool has 2 different load balancing algorithms. So one of them is breadth first, and the other one's called depth first. Just a slight bit around that. With your load balancing algorithm, if you do breadth first, that's the sort of default, what they call the default choice. What this does is think of it as round robin. So when you log in, when you connect, you'll just be connected to any available host pool, session host, any virtual machine that's available. With depth first, what that does is that will connect you to a specific session host. Again, that part's random. But then when more people connect, they'll connect to that same session host until it gets to a certain level of usage. And again, you can specify that. It could be 80% CPU usage or 80% RAM usage, whatever that number is. Once it hits that threshold, it then starts connecting other people joining who are new onto the next session host, and it follows that sort of trend. So again, this allows you to use things like automation and maybe power down virtual machines when they're not being used, and use all that good kind of Azure ecosystem stuff. The other deployment method is a personal host pool. Now, this is probably the more similar sort of deployment to Windows 365, because again, it's you assign it to a specific user, so it's almost personal, like it says in the name. It's personal to them. So this is probably the difference being, though, this is still a consumption-based model rather than a fixed price model. But the personal host pool is a specific VM that one user will connect to, so it's not shared with anybody. And you don't have the load balance algorithm either, because you don't need it. Essentially, it's just one VM per person. And as I've mentioned a couple of times already, jumping the gun, Azure Virtual Desktop is consumption-based pricing model. So to keep price down, to make sure you don't have a really high bill, you can use things like automation to power machines down when they're not being used and so forth to do that. There's great tools like Nerdio that can help with all that. Or you can use these sort of Azure-based services, native services. So what we've done now is we've discussed a bit about what Windows 365 is, and we've done a bit of an overview of Azure Virtual Desktop. So you've seen a bit of a difference already. Both sort of devices, desktop as a service. However, Azure Virtual Desktop is sort of more multi-session, and I've spelled session wrong, I've just realized. Amazing. And whereas Cloud 365 PC is more like a personal sort of physical device, Azure Virtual Desktop is probably a bit more like your traditional on-premises remote desktop services. Now, they both have 2 deployment methods, or 2 variations. Like I said, Windows 365 Cloud PC has business and enterprise variations. Azure Virtual Desktop has pooled and personal host pools. Again, 2 different sort of deployment methods. And again, another big difference between these 2 is that one is a fixed cost pricing model and the other is consumption-based. What I'd like to just have a quick sip of water, because I've been talking a lot. What I'd like
There's
to
a question in chat as well, Shabazz.
Just
while there's a break there. So if business Windows 365 business doesn't have endpoint protection, what are the options to protect PCs? I'm not sure if you're going into that later, but I thought I'd just call it out now while you're having a break.
If the business doesn't have endpoint protection, what are the options to create? So is that an antivirus question, essentially?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So again, because it's just because it's hosted in Microsoft doesn't mean that you can't customize it. So I actually don't touch on this. So it's a good question, and I'll answer it. The same sort of rules apply if you were building a machine on Azure Virtual Desktop, for example. You just install whatever your AV product is. So I'm hoping and assuming all businesses do have some sort of AV product, even if it's a free one or whatever. You just install that, because you can actually customize the images the same way you customize an image for Azure Virtual Desktop. You can do the same for Windows 365 Cloud PC. So you don't have to use the Windows Defender, as Jacob mentioned. you could potentially use the built-in for Windows, but same rules apply if you were doing it on premises. You just or in AVD, you just install whatever your product, your Defender product is, be it Sophos or eTrust, I don't know, and any other product. So I hope that answers your question, Doctor.
I think it does. I hadn't really considered. What the options were with that. There's a lot of different variations of capability around that, and endpoint protection. But you're right. If it's just a PC that has nothing, so it doesn't have, for instance, any other kind of solution built into it, right? So you have to add those on top.
Yeah. So again, it all depends on what your businesses they use. They will, again. Okay, good. That's answered the question. But yeah, again, most businesses, I've never come across a business that doesn't use AV, and I hope to God I never do. But whatever they use, you can just deploy that. Again, the similar rules apply. You can to AVD. You can have your own image. You can customize that to what you want. There is probably a bit more image management in Windows 365 because it might get to the point where people want different images. Whereas with AVD, you kind of have probably more host pool specific images. So you might have a host pool for marketing, for example. There'll be a marketing image. You might have your devs might have a host pool or whatever. There might be a dev specific one, and so on. So yeah, excellent. So
cool. That. Thank you.
So these are some use cases of no, but not these are. So these are some use cases of Windows 365 that I've actually had with customers, and again, because it's a very new product, as far as was it a couple of months ago? I think it was announced. What you find is when these sort of new services come out, and clients have something they kind of use that's similar, they want to know what it's on and if there's any benefits to it. And the other thing is as well, what I'm finding is that now that the whole pandemic life, let's call it, is changing back to what it used to be pre-pandemic, businesses are slowing down a bit as far as when the pandemic first hit. Okay, this is from my own experience, by the way. When pandemic first hit, a lot of businesses, obviously, a lot of customers weren't ready for it. I was working in the medium to small business area with clients that were kind of that size, and they just weren't ready for something like this to hit. It's 21st century. I wouldn't have thought in my wildest dreams that anything like this had happened. So overnight, they had to somehow facilitate remote working. So a lot of companies and businesses just jumped into that sort of Azure Virtual Desktop, endpoint manager. Let's just get our devices in the cloud. Let's get our users working from home. Now they've got time to take breath and take stock. A lot of businesses are starting to, I wouldn't say come out, try and reverse what they've done, but they're trying to manage it so rather than having everyone using that same service, maybe make that footprint a bit smaller. So they're looking at use cases and separating their technology stack into their use cases. So what use cases fit Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop, rather than throwing everybody in that pool. So what I am, again, the clients I'm talking to, mainly small to medium businesses as far as Windows 365 goes. When I've had those conversations with enterprise, your thousands user sort of clients, it just doesn't match any of their use cases, or they prefer the Azure Virtual Desktop and the capabilities, which I'll go into in my next slide. So I don't want to ruin the surprise. But what I'm finding is it's more small to medium businesses, and the reason for that, this is a big reason, that fixed rate cost model. When you're an organization, you might not have a big of turnover as an enterprise level company. You need to keep an eye on your costs and how much is going in and out. And having that knowledge of rather than like with a consumption based model, like I said, it can change from month to month depending on what your usage is. But having that fixed rate that every month that amount is going to go out, it lets you predict your costs a lot better for the year. It lets you manage your finances better. And that's why the smaller to medium businesses are probably drawn towards Windows 365 more. And the other really big use case that small medium businesses like is that MEM integration. Again, in my experience, a lot of sort of before Intune anyway, a lot of endpoint manager services were quite expensive. If you look at the sort of like Meraki was one that I used quite a bit. I know Meraki's like Cisco, they do wireless and stuff like that, but they also had like an MDM platform to it as well. and there's a lot of cost, a lot of management overhead associated with that. I think it's another one. It's another Cisco one. I can't remember off the top of my head. AirWatch is the one I've had experience with, but again, can be quite expensive, and again, quite a bit of management overhead in my experience. Endpoint Manager again is fairly simple to use, and because it integrates with that whole sort of Azure ecosystem, it's again a lot more. It looks a lot better for them, and they're kind of drawn towards it. It's a lot more appealing to small to medium businesses. So the conversations that I've been having with these small to medium businesses are specifically around wanting to facilitate contractors. So if you think about it, contractors are short-term employees. They have a fixed-term contract, be it 3-6 a year, whatever, 3-6 months a year, and for that 3 to 6 months, let's say if you have a short-term contractor, you'll have to potentially, before Windows 365, you'd have to build a machine, whatever your process is of building a laptop. You have to buy a laptop first of all. That's upfront cost. You then have to get it all provisioned and the software updated, installed. Make sure you manage it. Make sure you patch it. And don't get me wrong, the sort of patching and that sort of element is all, and you still have to provision it in Windows 365. But it's a lot quicker. It's a lot smoother. It's less overhead. You don't have to pay for a device up front. So you're actually saving a lot of cost. And again, because you have that fixed rate cost model, you can predict how much it's going to cost you to facilitate that contractor. So, okay, he's a 6-month contractor. We'll give him a Windows 365 VM in cloud for this amount. It'll be this much over 6 months. We know that's how much this contract is going to cost us. So again, it's a lot more appealing. I'm assuming you have a question, Dean, because you've popped up.
Yes, yeah. I have the luxury of not having to use chat. This also could be a stupid question, but I assume it's a per user license model. You keep saying it's a fixed cost, but it's per user.
Correct.
That's the only way it can do.
Yeah. It's per user. It's similar. Think about the Microsoft 365 subscriptions. The same. Each user has to have a license. Same with your cloud PC. Each user has to have I'll call it a subscription to that PC, essentially. So it's almost like renting that PC. Can
you have multiple licenses per user?
I don't believe so. I think you'd have to have a different user account, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, if I'm honest with you.
Interesting question, actually. I've not really thought of that.
I'm not sure how that would work. Because you can have multiple. You can have multiple subscriptions for 365. But you sometimes have to, if you have two subscriptions, let's say like an E3 and an E5 that would overlap, you end up having I think you have to disable a lot of the features that are across both. I think is the only way you can get around it. I think.
Yeah. I will look that up before the end of the show.
I wouldn't see a use case where it's a great question. I wouldn't see a use case where that would be applicable.
Well, I was thinking it's a horrible question to ask a speaker live. Sorry, that wasn't fair.
No.
But I'm thinking you might have a user who needs like a not very good PC for their day-to-day work, and then need to jump into a GPU-enabled computer, for instance. But I guess that's not really a problem. You wouldn't want to do that with Cloud PC because you're paying for both all the time. They're always on.
Yeah, and again, it kind of takes away from the whole sort of premise around it. I suppose it's a personal PC. What you could do is you can increase that Cloud PC's consumption, as in size. You can change its size to a GPU whenever they come out. Wink, wink. You can change the size of the. You can change the size of the.
I don't.
No. You can change the size of the PC. That'll probably be the way to do that. And I think that's probably another appealing area of Windows 365. You're not just stuck with that size. You can change the size quite easily. You can scale in and out as you want. That's the whole point of the cloud, though, isn't it? You can being able to scale in and out at a relatively cheap price and quickly. I think we have another question from Daniel. How much do we need to worry about isolating the cloud PC from either of these services from the endpoint being used to access them? I'm thinking data leakage or a path to our network. I need to worry about isolating the cloud PC. Try to understand what that question means.
Yeah, it's annoying when you can't get them to speak, because it's fantastic questions, and they are. You have to read them to understand them.
About these services, I'm thinking data leakage or a path into our network.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because these are. You mentioned that you can use these PCs on any device, right? They can be on your phone.
Yeah,
or
correct.
on a web
So
browser.
I suppose I think I have an answer for that. I suppose this is where, again, I do make this point later on in my talk, but it's that integration with the rest of the ecosystem. Okay, when I'm talking to clients around, why Microsoft Cloud, I go, well, it's not just, again, Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365, they're just VDI. Okay, let's be honest. As a platform on its own, it's just VDI. What sets it apart from its sort of the vendors that it comparative, like Citrix or VMware Horizon, is that integration with the rest of the ecosystem. So we're talking conditional access. Okay, so what you're talking about is protecting your data, except that stuff like that. I would say that's where the integration comes in with with your compliance and your conditional access policies. You essentially integrate. Oh, Dan's back. You integrate with the conditional access policies, so you can protect those PCs. The same rules apply to when, especially with that MEM integration, you can use all the good stuff you would be able to if you had an on-premises laptop. So conditional access, compliance policies, and all that sort of stuff, and also integrate it with the information protection services that you get with Azure AD Premium licenses. So there's lots of things you can do away from Cloud PC. From a network perspective, I suppose is maybe the other one. I think Cloud PC driver endpoint being data leakage or path into our network. Again, it's that whole a site-to-site VPN would probably be that's how you do it in Azure Virtual Desktop. Anyway, you do that site-to-site VPN, so it's encrypted in transit, encrypted at rest, and that's how you kind of connect it into your network. And again, making sure people can't download data onto their personal device that they're connecting to Windows 365. That's where your compliance policies come in, your conditional access policies. I hope that answers the question, Daniel. Sorry if it doesn't.
Thanks, Shabazz. There was another question from Andy, so I thought I'd just bring him back into chat. You can ask the question.
Yeah. Shabazz. So Shabazz, I was just wondering. Obviously it's quite new, but are there any known issues out there? Any starting issues with Windows 365?
So not that I'm aware of, and the reason, so as I might have mentioned off the top of the bar, I've not done any production deployments yet of it. It's more conversations, but again, as you'll see in a slide later on, it's just Azure Virtual Desktop on the back end. It uses the same technologies and the same services as Azure Virtual Desktop, so it's built on the same services that protect Azure Virtual Desktop. So even though it's a new service, the back end is exactly the same.
I have. Sorry, so I've seen there's some restrictions, like I think live sessions and stuff like that through Teams on them. I don't know if that's a similar thing on AVD or.
It is, unfortunately. I've not had great. So again, talking about Azure Virtual Desktop, because that's a lot of my production experiences with Azure Virtual Desktop. The Teams feedback hasn't been great. Obviously, there's a specific way you have to deploy Teams with Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 Cloud PC. The problem what I've experienced is when you have a multiple session conversation. So if we were talking now, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I count 6 of us, we would have a lot of quality issues. We'd have voice, we'd have video issues. When it's a one-to-one meeting, my experience is it's actually okay. You can
Right.
It facilitates it. But the more people you add into that conversation, is when you start having problems with quality, basically. Unless you have, probably need. That's more the multi-session pools as well. I would imagine on a personal one it might be different, but on the multi-session connections, unfortunately, I have seen a lot of issues.
Thanks very much.
No problem. Thank you. Oh, good. I'm glad that was answered Dan's question. Thank you, the other Dan, for the kind words. Where am I? Yes, use cases. We're back. Use cases. So contractors is the other one. This is the first one. Now, the other sort of conversation I'm having with a lot of clients is facilitate training. So again, I've spoken to a couple of like smaller sort of colleges, and they will have training rooms essentially, and those training rooms will have a number of PCs. Again, those PCs need managing, they need patching, and the same person won't log on to the same PC every session. It'll be different people. So I might come to I might come to a class once a week or twice a week there. I'll log on to a different PC each time. So multiple profiles on Windows machines. We all know how roaming profiles can be. I can just feel everyone shuddering when I mention roaming profiles. So training facilities. So having a PC specific to a user, and they can use that for their training, and they can get all their training resources off a share file, Azure file share, or a SharePoint site or whatever. But facilitating training is the other sort of use case that I've had conversations about, and that's quite a good one. Especially before we went live, we were talking about working in schools with Dan. And for schools, I think it'd be a good one. I've not spoken to any schools about it yet, but more kind of like a kind of private college. But yeah, facilitating training is the other really interesting use case that I've been talking to people. But again, there might be some businesses that want to facilitate all their users on it, but I've not experienced that conversation yet, where businesses, small businesses or medium-sized businesses are thinking about taking all their users off local devices and putting them all on. Because then, there comes a different conversation with that. Are all users willing to use their personal devices? They've got to have a personal device. In this day and age, believe it or not everybody has their own laptop. Not everyone has a tablet or whatever. They might not be able to facilitate that. So yeah, the contractors and the facilitating training is probably the two use cases that I think are probably the most applicable. So next.
And just on that point, sorry, Shabazz. So you mentioned that a business is limited to 300 users. If you were a massive enterprise who had thousands and thousands of users, maybe Exchange Online for 10,000 users, but you only had a few contractors that you wanted to train every month, you could potentially buy the Windows 365 business and use that for that purpose, right?
Correct. And the thing is, the funny thing is, with enterprise customers, I'm even though they have a similar use case for contractors, they seem to be drawn more towards Azure Virtual Desktop, and it's being able. And again, you're ruining my flow, man. I'm going to get into all that. I'm joking, obviously. Just to answer Dean's question. Again, the conversations I'm having, enterprise level customers seem to be more geared towards Azure Virtual Desktop, and it's mainly because of the automation. So I'll answer your question in more detail now, Dan, because it is essentially this slide. So yeah, enterprise orgs that have gone more with Azure Virtual Desktop. I like to say my claim to fame is that I did the third UK wide deployment of what was Windows Virtual Desktop back then through PowerShell back in March time, I want to say. So it was like a couple of months old when I did it. That was about 300 to 400 users for the company that I worked at the time. And it was for an NHS trust. So that was a huge deployment and a massively important deployment. But that was, again, more kind of that sort of automation element of it is what kind of attracted them towards Azure Virtual Desktop. And it's the same conversations I'm having now. Being able to integrate it with stuff like Terraform, those and services like that. That's where they're seeing a lot of value. And that's, like I said, automation is what's kind of geared towards the enterprise orgs, and that's kind of why they pull towards it rather than Windows 365 Cloud PC. Another big selling point is that sort of integration with the rest of the Azure ecosystem. And like I said, although my Windows 365 does integrate with MEM, as does AVD, it's having that additional sort of integration with services to automate sizing and automate shutdowns And again, you have that MEM integration with Azure Virtual Desktop as well. But again, being able to integrate with your different your Sentinel and sort of services like that. I'm not sure if Windows 365 Cloud PC is there yet. As I say, it's a very new service, but I can imagine on the roadmap somewhere it will be. But at the moment, I don't think quite it's there yet. But that's kind of what is drawn in my conversations anyway. That's what's drawn people or enterprise organizations towards Azure Virtual Desktop. I've got a few questions which I'm going to answer. I can see customers like QA training that I would work for, rather than having to wipe and install something, Yeah, 100%, Dan. I fully agree. In my work, I have seen a project, but okay, these are just conversations, not... Okay, cool. Okay, sorry, going back to the presentation. Use cases. So again, a lot of the conversation before Windows 365 Cloud PC came along, we were having a similar conversation for contractors, as Dean mentioned, with Azure Virtual Desktop as well. But the big one, the big one that I've seen, excuse me, is BCP and disaster recovery. Now, this goes back to what I was saying earlier with that a lot of organizations, especially the enterprise organizations that kind of, they were already partly in the cloud, a lot of enterprise organizations, but they weren't from an infrastructure perspective. They still had a big on-premises footprint. And because they're now slowing down and looking at where their infrastructure is, looking at where their footprint is, looking at where their costs are, they're now starting to draw back on Azure Virtual Desktop and have it for specific use cases. Now, BCP and disaster recovery, one of the conversations I've had recently was, what if we have another pandemic? Can you imagine? Again, as I mentioned earlier, I couldn't imagine 18 months ago, in the 21st century, with medicine being what it's like, we're very advanced, I'd like to think, in my opinion. We'd have some sort of, another bloody Spanish flu almost, we'd have a pandemic. But here we are, 18 months on. And what customers are looking at now in the enterprise orgs I've spoken to is being prepared for the next one. And having Azure Virtual Desktop, and again, the beauty of consumption-based is you can power it down, shut it down, stop it, and you pay minimum pennies. And for enterprise organizations, they've got a bit more expenditure, a bit more, they can spend a bit more money, but having it shut down and stopped and just there for a rainy day, for when they have to, press the button on BCP and disaster recovery, rather than having another site, physical site, or another office. They're saying, why don't we use Azure Virtual Desktop? Because we can stop it and have minimal costs. Whereas if we had a physical office, we'd have to pay for the office. We'd still all the hardware would still be powered on. We'd be paying for double licensing. This way, we can lower our costs, and also we can be ready for that rainy day. We can be ready for that next pandemic. God forbid it ever happen. Dean, you're back.
You just made me think about there being another pandemic, and it really ruined my day. I just
Sorry,
to show a sad face. But yeah, you're right. Any organization who doesn't expect the unexpected or expect there to be another pandemic is, very short-sighted as far as I'm concerned at the moment. We need to assume that it's going to be bad for a while and continue to be bad, and then the next thing will come along. And having the flexibility, as you say, to jump into a really useful backup scenario, which AVD is. I was just thinking though, you could do the same with Windows Virtual Desktop if you did all the prep for Windows 365.
Windows 365.
If you did all the prep, and then if you're CSP, you can ramp those licenses down to 1 or 2, and then whenever you have the pandemic, you bring them back up to your 5,000 or whatever.
But by all means, again, you could think of a lot of services that will work in a BCP disaster recovery scenario. But with the sort of, if you talk about, I'm talking about having another site almost, like another office potentially. This is the AVD is that equivalent. Whereas, for a smaller organization, but again, we're talking if they didn't have their own laptops, if we're talking about an organization that has laptops and they're sat in the office, they're very office based, they don't remote work a lot, and then all of a sudden overnight they have to send people home and they have to work from home, but they've not got that sort of remote working capability. VPN, but mobile VPN, as we found out, mobile VPN fell flat on its face at the start of the pandemic. Yeah, AVD is a sort of it's a sort of way conversations I've been having anyway. And again, these organizations have used Azure Virtual Desktop during the pandemic, and they've but they had to accommodate everybody on it because everyone's working from home. Now that's moving back into more people. I'm starting to work more in the office. I was there today, going twice a week, maybe ramp it up to 3 days a week soon. But that's the way people are going. Business, enterprise organizations are going, and small to medium businesses. But the conversations I'm having more with enterprise orgs is around Vcp disaster recovery rather than throwing everyone on it. Windows 365 Cloud PC, I suppose, but that'd be from a sort of desktop specific, kind of, for those users that maybe work remote. I mean,
maybe.
Yeah, it's an idea. I think it'd be a lot more complicated.
It would,
because obviously there's that licensing, and you'd have to speak to your CSP, get them to ramp it up. There'd be a lot more plays to spin, I think. Whereas with Azure Virtual Desktop, you could build it, configure it, all that sort of stuff. To be fair, you wouldn't even have to do that. You could just do a Terraform script that's ready to pull the trigger on and build in a matter of hours. That's what you could do with AVD. So you wouldn't even have to spend anything really. Just make sure your BCP plan is tight. Make sure it's documented. For God's sake, people, document. And
we don't need to with Terraform, do you? It's all documentation as code, isn't it?
It is, but you still, if say that I'm off that day and no one else knows how to do it, we need some documentation. So
that's a bad day. Pandemic and Shabazz is off. I can't imagine.
That's a very bad day. That's like a Monday, isn't it? That's awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, BCP disaster recovery is the sort of use cases, conversations I've been having. And what I'm trying to differentiate, I'm trying to differentiate between the two here. My whole theme is that there is a place in this world for both Windows 365, Cloud PC, and Azure Virtual Desktop. They don't compete. They don't have to compete with each other. So one more use case as well, where a full desktop isn't required. So again, we certain jobs, they don't require a full desktop. There might be something like let's say a Sparky or Sparky's an electrician for those who are in Yorkshire, or someone who may be a bit more manual and maybe might need to update a system once a day, with the jobs they've done. They don't need a full desktop. They just need an application. So rather than giving them access to a full desktop, why don't we just deploy an app? Why don't we publish an app? Use MSIX app attach to publish an app that they need. They log in on their tablet. They'll see their app, launch their app, off they go. So that's the other use case where a full desktop isn't required, but they just need one or two apps. They might need Word, they might need Excel, whatever. So that's the other sort of use case I've been speaking to enterprise organizations about, where they don't want to give they don't need to give everyone a full desktop. Let's give them a specific app. You can publish that app for a couple of different methods. MSIX app attach, for example. So again, what we've done there is we've looked at use cases, or I've looked at use cases that I've experienced, the discussions I've experienced, and as you can see, there's a place for both. There's different use cases, different size organizations, kind of going towards different services. So this next slide is so this is my kind of last slide I want to go through. And this is really going to hit home the differences between AVD and Windows 365. So you might have seen this slide other places. I've kind of created a little version of it myself. I hope everyone can see that. So Windows 365 versus Azure Virtual Desktop. On the far left in red, we've got the various services, let's say. So control pane, subscription, compute, storage, networking, user profiles, IAM. If we look at Windows 365, we have the two variations I spoke about, enterprise and business. So the control pane is Azure Virtual Desktop. Shock, horror. That's like, who would have thought? And it's the same for AV. It's based on Azure. It is just an Azure Virtual Desktop. The same backend services that manage AVD manage Windows 365. Okay. Subscription. It's Microsoft managed except the networking element. For enterprise, and for business, it's fully Microsoft managed. So again, with enterprise, you get a bit more access to it, whereas business is a lot more Microsoft managed. You don't have to do as much or anything really. All kind of, again, aimed at the smaller business. If we move across to AVD, we see that's client managed. So your subscription, you have to manage yourself. So again, a massive difference there. From a compute perspective, again, with both the enterprise and business for Windows 365, it's Microsoft managed, it's a fixed cost, and you have no direct access to the virtual machines. That's a massive thing. Whereas for Azure Virtual Desktop, it's managed by you, the client. You have access to those VMs. It's consumption-based model, cost model. It's agile. You can automate. You can turn machines off when you're not using them. You can scale in. Well, you can scale it out with both, I suppose. That's a bad example. From a storage perspective, Windows 365, both enterprise and business. Again, Microsoft managed, fixed costs, several storage sizes, and it's a service level disaster recovery. Whereas if we go across to AVD, they're managed OS disks. You use FSLogix integration with Azure Files to manage those user profiles and if you want any application masking. It's all client managed, consumption-based model. I've said about 1 million times in this presentation. And it's easy enough it's agile still, and it's easy enough to back up as well. So you can use, Azure Backup, for example. You can use, third-party products like Veeam, or, I'm a big Veeam advocate, so I love Veeam. Networking. So enterprise, customer managed, consumption-based costs. So no one's asked me about egress yet, which is a thank God. But for an egress networking perspective, the same rules apply as they would any Azure infrastructure as a service. You still have those same sort of egress and ingress costs. You don't get away from those. Agile routing, and it's you have protection services, and you still have that security with the enterprise model. With the business version of Windows 365 Cloud PC, it's Microsoft managed again. You can see a theme with the business. Not a lot of access, not a lot of management needed from the client. Fixed cost, no direct access to the network, and no flexibility. Really is, it's just made for small businesses that have maybe 1 or 2 people in their IT team, that can't afford that overhead. It's made for those sort of businesses, in my opinion. Move across to AVD networking, client managed, consumption-based costs, very agile, all the routing access. And it's got that same level of security and IPS as well. When we go to the user profiles, coming towards the end now, both for enterprise and business Windows 365, local profiles. Again, we talk about it being very similar to a PC at home that you would have, a local PC, a physical PC. You have local profiles. Same thing. Azure Virtual Desktop, FSLogix optional for the personal pools. And for pooled, it's compulsory. For pooled, you have to have the FSLogix integration with the Azure file share. Whereas for the personal, it's optional. You don't have to have it. You can get away with the sort of not having FSLogix. Again, FSLogix is a great tool and a great having integration with AVD. I'm a big fan of that integration. Finally, a very important one in my opinion. Identity and access management is massive in cloud. The way I always like to explain it is, not everyone might not agree with this. This is again my personal opinion. When you're talking on-premises solutions, everything I got told that everything sits on your network. So it's vital when I was working with on-premises services that I understood networking, because all services they sat on top of a network. When it comes to cloud, that's not the case. It's actually identity and access management. Everything, no matter what service, it might be PaaS, SaaS, IaaS, it all sits on top of your identity. That's why, in my opinion, identity and access management is one of the key services with cloud. Windows 365 and AVD are no different. So with enterprise, there's again 2 variations, enterprise and business. You can have that hybrid AD join. It's a requirement. You can have Azure AD join coming soon, very, very soon, I believe. Azure AD DS, so Azure AD Domain Services, is not supported with Windows 365. That's quite a big thing, whereas, it obviously is with AVD, which I'll go into in a second. For the business version of Windows 365, Azure AD join only and no Active Directory domain service option. So again, very, very not a lot of flexibility. And again, for me personally, geared and aimed directly towards those small businesses that don't need that or don't want that management overhead. So with AVD, again, both across the pooled and personal, Active Directory domain service is a requirement. Windows AD, so also your standard domain controller on a Windows VM, or Azure AD domain services is supported as well. Now it says on this that this slide's a bit old. I do apologize. Native Azure AD joins soon. That's now GA as of, I want to say, a few weeks ago. Very recent. Works very well as well. So that is Azure Virtual Desktop, or Windows 365 versus Azure Virtual Desktop. As you can see, there's a place in the industry for both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. There's different use cases. Especially with Azure Virtual Desktop, I've had a lot of different use cases I've experienced because I've been lucky enough to be working with it since it came out. Windows 365 is very new. Hopefully, I'll get to do some deployments soon. But at the moment, a lot of conversations, a lot of interesting conversations. I hope that's been informative. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm happy to take any questions.
So, Jabaz, hi, Sandy. I've got a question again.
Yeah, sure.
I've seen a couple of comments out there on the internet about Windows 6, the pricing of it all. And it does shape up to be more expensive, doesn't it? Generally on the Windows 365 front, and I guess that's because it's economies of scale, right? Is that would you say that is the main reason, or
the other thing as well that about it is you still so what they've not done, I don't believe, is package it up. So you still need a Microsoft 365 subscription. So you still need Enterprise, E3, E5, or Business Premium, whatever. And then on top of that, you need your Windows 365 Cloud PC license. So already the costs are stacking up. But again, it's like you said, that's probably the main reason for it. It depends how successful it is, whether or not they change that or not. I believe it'd be a lot more successful if they packaged it all up.
I think you're right.
The thing is on that though, if you look at the cost, so per user per month, 20 quid. For a cloud PC, right? For the minimum, and there's a lot of customers who want to use a cloud PC but don't use Microsoft 365. They don't use Office. They might use Google. They might, and so to package it all up, the Microsoft 365 Enterprise E3, for example, is 28 quid a month retail, right? So if they package it up and kept the same kind of value, then it would be 48 quid for that package service, right?
But if you look at Azure Virtual Desktop, they've included that service within. Well, I think the minimum it comes with is Microsoft 365 Business Premium. So you get to without, you still need it to use AVD. You get the Windows 10 cal,
right?
And what I'm struggling to understand is why is it different for, I know they've got to take into account the consumption, but I'm sure there's something they can package up where you get that cal and you get, okay, fair enough, you maybe put the price up a bit more, but maybe they will. Maybe if it doesn't hit off as much as it can.
Tough, I think, because you have to cater for the people who don't want Office 365, but they do want to use the awesome, the concept of Windows 365. And when it's such a high cost, and you're also trying to maintain the cost of Microsoft 365 because of all the benefits you get there, then it becomes very expensive if you're trying to bundle them together.
My gut feel is they'll end up bringing the price down. Personally.
Yeah, they'll have to. You noticed I didn't say cost saving once in my session.
Yeah,
because I'm very careful about that. I personally don't believe there is a cost saving. The different and what's attracting people towards it initially is that fixed cost rather than a consumption one. Not the, like I said, I agree. Not much of a cost saving when you do some hard maths around it.
Cool. I've got a question. No more questions in chat. It's my turn. So it's not about that, to be honest. You've obviously got a lot of experience with Azure Virtual Desktop because you well, you managed to drag our very own Simon Lee from 0, didn't you, to hero in a recent
You tried.
thing. How did that go?
Do you want to stand up, Simon, quickly? Do you want to show your?
I can do, yeah.
There he is with his with his hoodie. Yeah, so that's a good question. Thank you. Yeah, I thought it went really well. When we were kind of brainstorming about what I wanted to do next, it was actually Simon's idea. He said, "Why don't you do like a 0 to hero around Azure Virtual Desktop?" I'm like, "Okay, do you want to be? What do you know about it?" And he's like, "Not much." I went, "Right, well, do you want to be my co-host?" And it kind of started like that, just a random conversation around it.
Yeah.
It's massive. I think it was massively successful. I got loads of positive comments around it. And again, it was a very. I tried to aim my content at a kind of do you call it level 100 maybe, or sort of beginners to kind of just making just learning the sort of services, because there's loads of content out there like Microsoft Docs for people who want to go really advanced. So I tried to aim it at people who are just wanting to learn new stuff. So try and keep it as simple and basic as possible. It's massively fun to do. I got loads out of it as well, and it was just it was good fun. Again, I was doing it with a mate. So what else? What else can you want? And again, we tried to show the integration with the rest of the ecosystem in Azure, which was one of the things I wanted to hit home with ABD. This. As a platform on its own, it's just VDI. What sets it apart from other vendors and other competitors is that ecosystem. So yeah, it was very fun. If anybody wants to watch it, it's still up on my YouTube channel. I am IT Geek on YouTube, so you can feel free to.
Just taking that off the screen there. There's a fourth link down there. Obviously, a link won't help in PowerPoint. Well done. But yeah, it's I'm IT Geek. Assume. Let's put a link. While I'm doing the quiz, you stick that link into chat if you can.
Yeah, I'll put it there.
Or someone can, I'm sure.
I'm working on it.
There you go.
There we go.
Very good.
Thank you.
And I think personally one of the great things about community, or at least the community that we've come to love over the past sort of 18, 24 months, is that random conversations can have this impact, right? So this started through random conversations in the community, and yours did too. You've obviously started a new thing with Victor. I'm not going to pronounce his surname, but Victor, who has been on this show in the past, and is coming back in a few weeks' time, which would be awesome. Around. What do you want to introduce that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, again, so started a new podcast. Really, it's just voice only. It's not just easy listening while you're traveling. And again, as you'll probably see in the next few weeks, me and Victor have co-authored a book together on SC 400 exam, so the information protection one. So that's how our sort of friendship started. And again, we have a weekly call just to catch up, random conversation. It's like, I'm thinking about doing a podcast about this topic. What do you think? And well, sounds good. He says, do you want to co-host? Yeah, why not? And our aim is, again, I don't know what your opinions are or the people who are listening, but we have this amazing cloud community. Okay, great people. I've not got a bad thing to say about it. There are other communities out there as well. One of them being, for example, cybersecurity. Now, I follow the odd person on cybersecurity, not a lot, and that's me. I need to work on that. But Victor's quite heavily involved in cybersecurity because it's his job as well. He knows a lot of people in the community. I personally and Victor agreed. We don't see any sort of crossover between the two. It's such an important subject for cybersecurity and security in general. Mm. And I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just when you have a community around, so we have a cloud community, we just everyone's welcome, but we just focus on cloud. We don't kind of look elsewhere to, okay, what's security doing? What are they doing over there? What are they doing over there? Thank you for the kind words, Doctor. And what we want to do is we want to try and fill that bridge and get that gap. So we're going to try and do cybersecurity in cloud and have that integration, have guests on that kind of overflow both areas, have some guests from cybersecurity. and give them a platform and hopefully integrate the two sort of communities together and bridge that gap. That's the whole point. That's what we're trying to cover, really.
Cool. No, it sounds good. I enjoyed the first episode. And the second episode is soon, I think.
Yeah, so I believe there's a couple. Dan, I think you're going, and Simon. We're going to be at the Microsoft 365 Cloud Summit, South Coast Summit, on Friday and Saturday. And we're going to be, we've arranged to record our podcast from there. So we'll have little snippets, hopefully some video. I'm taking my GoPro with me. We'll have some videos of the event and maybe some interviews with people that we bump into. And I think I'm presenting as well. I'm doing a presentation around endpoint. It's called Endpoint Manager in a Pandemic. So it's a use case that I worked on back March, April 2020. And it's essentially, again, the message is how technology can save lives, really. And it's, in this case, it's Endpoint Manager, and how it allowed a school to facilitate having students at home, being able to manage those devices from home, and just that whole story, really, and the path behind it.
Wow. Sounds good.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, fantastic. Thanks for doing this. This has been an awesome hour or so.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having
we have
me.
the quiz coming up. You're not allowed to take part because you have a good 5-second advantage on the on YouTube, I'm afraid. Unless you disconnect and join us on YouTube, then you're welcome to. But there is a £25 Amazon gift voucher up for grabs. So I'm going to just join that. Just stick that on the screen now while we're chatting, and to wait for a few people to connect up. So if you go to menti.com on your computer or on your phone and tap in that code, you'll hopefully join this screen. Got 10 people watching apparently across Twitter and YouTube, so hopefully we'll get a couple of people. If just one person joins, we won't bother. We'll just give that £25 voucher to the one person who joins, which will be lovely.
I've got a question for Shabazz, actually.
Go on,
Yeah, go for it.
How do you get hold of your podcast easily? Is it on any of the podcast sites or Google Podcasts, Apple Music?
So what we decided was, so it's on this I think it's called Acast. So it's on a specific platform at the moment. Okay. I think we're waiting for it to see how it goes. But again, with anything new, you don't know how it's going to go down. We don't know what sort of reviews or listeners we're going to get. So because it was the first couple of episodes, I thought, well, let's see how it goes. If we get good feedback, then we'll start investing a bit more time and effort into it, and maybe recording it as a YouTube video as well, and putting it on Spotify and all these others. So at the moment, I think Simon's put the link, or somebody's put the link in the in the chat.
Cool.
So it's only available on that platform at the moment. So far, we've had the feedback's been amazing, so I think we will be investing a bit more time in getting it on sort of your Spotify's and other media. So.
I really enjoyed it, Alice, last night.
I did.
Really good sound quality. Just really easy. Like you say, it's audio only, and it's just perfect for sticking on speaker and just listening to while you're doing other things. So it was really good.
Yeah,
I think that's what we're going to stick to, really. For the Bradford Cloud User Group, we do like a video podcast where we're on screen. We have our guest on screen, and it's great. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I really enjoyed doing just a voice only one. Yeah. I didn't have to do my hair. I didn't have to brush my teeth or anything. It was great. I just.
Yeah, and you've kept up the same theme. Thanks very much for
That's so mean.
Very good. All right, we're going to jump into the quiz. We've got 4 people in the quiz, so fantastic chance to win £25 here. Give it a couple of seconds, but we'll start that quiz now. Please don't be offended, Shabazz. That wasn't.
I'm joking, mate. Come on.
Yeah, good. All right, we'll jump into that now. Fine. So here we go. Now, I've been taking lessons from the Welsh Azure user group, and their quiz was really hard. So good luck with this one. 4 people who have joined. Which of the following is not a Windows 365 edition available today? Is that 365 Business, 365 Enterprise, or 365 Pro? Super quick. Good. Yeah. So it's not. That one's not available. Next up, we have a look at the leaderboard. I'm clicking. It's not going anywhere. There we go. So just a bit of information. Jacob won this quiz last time. So good luck, Jacob. You could be the second person who's won twice on this show. Right. There's a minimum number of licenses required to purchase Windows 365. True or false? One true, three false. The answer is false. There isn't a minimum number. Chris in the lead there, I think. No, Jacob has. Yeah, let's move off that then. Next question. Windows 365 supports multiple users per single cloud PC. True or false? Oh, not true or false. Only in Windows 365 Business, only in Enterprise, in both Business and Enterprise, or not at all. Yep, so not at all. That isn't possible. It's one PC per person. Look at the leaderboard. See how we're doing. Oh, I've skipped over the leaderboard. Apologies. I'm so excited. So, no timer on this. Which word did Shabazz spell wrong during his talk? There's a good long timer on this because I didn't give you any warning that you'd have to get your phone out and start typing. But this, as I say, I've been learning from Matt Fatunka from the Welsh Azure user group, and he is mean on his. So we've got one answer. Two, please don't write rude words. That could get us taken off air. One more answer. 12 seconds. Nope, all the way down to the line here. 3, 2, 1. And the correct answer was session, and someone got it right. I was quite lenient with the spelling on that. Someone got it right, clearly. So we'll see who that was. That is Chris Wright. Well done. Good listening. 1,000 points there. Look at that. Streaming ahead. Okay, back to the normal questions. Cloud PCs can be resized to amend the RAM, CPU, and storage. Is that available in business, enterprise, both, or not at all? Everyone's voted. It is only available in enterprise. I've skipped the leaderboard. Apologies, I didn't see who got that right there, but we'll just hurry this along. We're at time now. So, within Azure, Trusted Launch enables better rocket building practices, Azure MFA for VMs, or VTPM for VMs. Right at the last second there. It is VTPM for VMs, so congratulations to the two who got that right. And take a look at the leaderboard before the last question. I think it's the last question coming up. And this one is directly inspired by Matt Fatunka. So you've got a good chunk of time. We've got Chris Wright and Boaty McBoatface. Let's see how we go. Maximum point, I think, for... Oh, it's not this one. Not this one. One more question after this. Too excited, sorry. Windows 365 could be used offline without an internet connection. Only in business, only in enterprise, in both, Not at all, or only on Patch Tuesdays. Not at all, obviously, although it is on the roadmap apparently. Okay, the final question. This is a typing in question, so get your fingers ready. Type the word. What word do these images make you think of? One answer. Just the one answer. Just bringing everyone back on the screen. I think we're going to hit the limit on this. See how we go. Lost the timer now, but 3, 2, 1. Cloud PC, green cloud, or C, green cloud? Well done. The answer was Cloud PC. Well done to whoever got that right. We'll see in a second.
Oh, that was horrendous.
In the Welsh crew, much worse than that. I think I'm quite generous with that one.
That question with which word did I spell wrong was a bit unfair because it could have been a number of words, I'm pretty sure.
I know. So both Chris Wright and Boaty McBoatface got that right. And Chris Wright is the winner. Congratulations. Thanks for joining. Great input. I think we've had quite a small number of viewers this time live, but I think that was fantastic input from everyone who's joined. So thank you for watching if you have. Thank you also to Shabazz and the rest of the team for joining us. That is it really, unless anyone's got any more things they want to chat about with Shabazz or the team. Thank you for taking part. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time.
Much.
We have Donna Ryan, MVP, who is going to be talking about Winwich, because I did a video on Winwich in the past and I wasn't very good at it. So she's going to do Winwich Part 2. The stuff being missed, I think is the title of that session. But that's in a couple of weeks' time, 4th Tuesday on the 26th of October, with Donna Ryan, who we're really excited for that session as well. So please register for that. We'll send some comms on Twitter shortly. So thank you for joining.
Cheers all. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Bye.
Nice. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Thanks all.